Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are tackling building a new firewall for the Frankenholer. Alright guys, before we get into it today, I just want to take a second out to thank this week's video sponsor, which is DDPAI and their 4G 3-channel Z60 dashcam. So the Z60 dashcam comes with the dashcam. You will need to add a SD card, the mount. It has a 4G antenna, and for this you need to get a separate SIM card to actually take advantage of all the 4G ability. We have the hardwire kit ready to go, the rear camera, which is here, and you also get a handy trim tool. But today we actually have a third camera. So this is the Mini 2X. It's a 2K dashcam, which could be a standalone dashcam, but in this case we're using it for a third channel. So this kit can run 3 channels at once. And to run this setup all together, we have the separate wire pieces that will join the signals all together. So some of the unique benefits of the Z60 is 4G connectivity, so you can get remote alerts and monitoring via the app. If anything happens to your car while you're away, this will send you a notification through your phone, which is very handy, and you can also log on through the app and actually see what's happening outside your car from wherever you are. So one of the other benefits of the Z60 is it's got AOV technology that basically uses ultra low power time-lapse photography, so that this will wake up within a second. If anything happens, it records and will not drain the battery. All right, we have our nice clean location. I've got my camera and my mount, fit the mount to the camera. Try to avoid the tinted area of the screen. I'll take my anti-static where I want to put it, which is about there. So with the anti-static secure in place, you stick on the camera, making sure it's nice and square and has a nice clear vision, and adjust the height and then wire it in. And the Mini 2X internal camera, I'm going to mount up above the mirror up here, just so it gets a nice clear view of the inside of the car without getting in the way of the other camera. Doing the same with the rear camera, making sure you tuck away all the wires, then just follow the simple prompts for the setup, and you are ready to go with this super clear 4K daytime vision and the SR special effects overlays. And the night vision, even in this terrible weather, is still a super clear picture. All right, and go and check out DDPAI with their Z60 3-channel 4K dashcam, and help out the companies that help out the channel. All right, let's get back to the build. All right, guys, welcome back. Happy New Year to everyone, and those who have been following know that this is the Frankenholer. This is a 1954 Ford F600 truck cab that I have actually put on top of a Toyota Coaster bus chassis from 1995. And if you missed the last episode where I worked on it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up. And like always, do the things like and subscribe and comment. Like I said, it all helps out that crazy algorithm. So where we left off last week, I made a exhaust for the Frankenholer, and there were a bunch of comments about what I had done with the exhaust. Some were concerned about the exhaust valve that I kept in this. So for those who don't understand what it actually is, on a lot of trucks and the Toyota Coaster buses, they have some sort of braking system for slowing down when you back off the accelerator without actually having to use the brake, to engine brake. And on the Coaster bus, that method was an exhaust valve, which is basically just a flap that closes and mostly blocks the exhaust pipe when you release the accelerator, so that it will slow you down with the engine rather than just free rolling and having to use the brakes all the time. I retained that and kept that in the system. Now, there were some concerns about the fact that it's got a turbo on it. There are heaps of trucks that have exhaust brakes and with factory with turbos, I'm not concerned one little bit. I think it'll be totally fine on this system. The other one was there were lots of comments about the fact that I don't have a flex in the system. It didn't originally have one. So the original exhaust didn't have any flex there. It's got very flexible exhaust mount brackets, and there's quite a bit of movement there available in that exhaust pipe. So the fact is if I do have a problem, it's really, really easy for me to fix it. All of this is made by me, so if it doesn't work, then I can fix it. So I'm not overly concerned about that. There was some confusion about why I switched around the exhaust or the mufflers that were there, and it's because that there's the horizontal bars that go in the chassis along, and the mufflers didn't fit between the other places, so I couldn't keep it together and just move it rearwards. And as some rightly brought up, that now it's got a turbo on it, it probably would get away with one of the mufflers. And like you saw, I didn't finish the end of it, the exit, last time, because I don't know where the body's going yet, and I may actually end up deleting one of those mufflers later. But we'll just see how it sounds, see where it goes. I want it to be something that's comfortable for a long trips, so it doesn't have to be loud. It's a diesel. It's not a very interesting engine as far as exhaust note goes. I just want it to be quiet and comfortable in the cab, basically. But adding the turbo, giving it just a little bit more oomph to go up hills and things like that. It's not really for out and out power. Anyway, hopefully that covered the last episode, but you might have seen last time I started working on patching up the firewall where I cut basically the whole thing out to mount the engine. So now we need to make something back again. So let's get in there and show you what we're up to. All right, so this is the start of the center tunnel that I began to make last week. And it's just a mock-up at this stage, just getting an idea of what I need to do so I can start placing things where I want them. And what I need to do now is have a bit of a think and see how I'm going to gradually evolve this. My plan is to basically make a whole bunch of sheet metal parts. I'll probably just clip them all together and just keep refining it until I'm happy, and then I'll weld it later. So first of all, I am patching in the floor, just using a couple of offcuts that I had lying around, and connect them so that my tunnel will actually sit on something solid. And now it's a matter of measuring and centering the tunnel and making sure it's in the right location before drilling and adding some clecos to that as well. So once the tunnel's mounted, I need to make sure I've got enough clearance in the rest of the firewall to make a nice neat transition from the firewall to the new tunnel. Then it's back to the old cardboard aided design to get the first piece lined up roughly how I would like it. And the good thing about using cardboard to start with is I can sort of cut and tape things together and just get the rough template before I spend a lot of time cutting and trimming steel. And with the template roughly how I want it, I then transfer it onto a sheet of steel and roughly cut it to shape. Now you saw I made up a bit of a dodgy cardboard template. I haven't really done it as well as I could if I'd made up a wireframe buck and things like that, like the Crucible Coachworks guys. I could really go to town, but I'm just going to start seeing if I can stretch and shrink this panel and see if I can get it to get some sort of shape that might work in my situation. I'm not afraid of cutting and re-welding it together and things like that if I need to, but yeah, just be nice to experiment a bit and just try my hand at a bit more metal shaping, which is something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. So I think this will be a good project for it, so let's give it a go. So I want to give this panel a bit of shape so that it blends in nicely with the curved tunnel I've already got. So I'm just having a go on the English wheel and getting that crown in the panel that I want. And I realised I needed a bit of extra shape, so I'm using the stump and mallet to get that into it.
And then a little bit of work with the shrinker stretcher. So shrinking the edge and then stretching the center will give me that nice curve that I'm looking for. I folded the corners, and the more that I work this, the more I realize that trying to get this beautiful transition in the corner in one piece is really stretching my abilities, and I don't think I'm going to pull it off. So I keep persevering, but in the end I'm just going to cut it out and do it as a separate piece, which is much simpler. And there you can see I've given up and cut it out. So again, a couple of clicos just to hold it roughly in place, and continue to mark and trim and get everything to fit up with each other quite nicely.
All right, that is looking pretty good. So we have this whole side loosely lined up, and these couple of pieces are looking good. Now we need to make a patch to fill in that little spot there and the one in the corner.
So to make my template for this piece, I use masking tape and then trace around the edge of the hole, and once I peel that off, I have a pattern that I can transfer onto my steel. Makes things much easier getting the shape close very quickly.
All right, that is really coming together. So we've sort of tied in all three of these pieces here, and yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's come out. So I use the method of using some masking tape to basically make a pattern. That way it made it much easier to trim out my metal piece to go in there. So before I go too much further, I'm quite happy with the basic shape I have here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scribe all of the edges where the joins are. I'm going to trim, tack, and weld this these pieces together. Because I know it's going to warp a bit, then I can sort of make sure that fits before I get 20 pieces that I need to join together and they're all over the place. So let's join up what we got.
So I mark all of my joins and then disassemble everything and trim everything out, but I leave little tiny tabs where the clicos were so that I can join everything back together in the same locations as it was before. Putting it all back into the cab again, reassembling it all, and then tacking the pieces together. Really making sure that the levels are perfect at this stage so it makes my life a whole lot easier later. Quickly grind back all the welds and flip it over and cut off those little tabs that were holding it together before, because now it's all welded into one big piece. And then I'm going through with the TIG and TIGging it all together so that I have a nice seamless join all over the part.
All right, so the first few bits are trimmed and welded in, and it's looking really good. I'm quite happy with the way this all flows, this all sits. It's back connected up. So next I need to get this piece here, sit that into place, mark it out, trim it out, and weld it on, and we should be cooking with gas.
So this corner piece is critical, so I decided to do it in a separate stage rather than doing it when I welded everything else together. I wanted to get a lot of the warping out of the way before it sort of locks this upper and lower piece together with this corner. So scribe and mark it all out and then trim it. And once I'm happy, I mount it all back into the cab again, lock it all in, and then tack it together so that I've got it all in the right location. And then grind off all of the MIG welds and TIG it all up on the bench, making sure I get everything nice and even with the hammer and dolly first. And you see I'm really taking my time, making sure everything's nice and neat and level before I commit to welding it solid. And once I'm happy, I grind all the welds down and just try and make it reasonably neat and tidy. It's not perfect, but it's close enough. And then make sure it still fits.
All right, that is looking really good. By adding this corner in, this is nice and solid now, and it's still only just held in by clicos. This other side is still a bit flexible because there's not the structure there. So adding in this structure really strengthens everything up, and that is why I'm going to weld it into the floor. I could have made it removable. There were some suggestions of that. There's no service parts that I need to get to under there, so I'm happy to leave this sealed up. So what I need to do now, my next task is to fill in this little corner up here. So I think I'm going to make another paper template and see what I can come up with.
And again with this corner piece, I'm using the tape template method.
So I've made a tape template, and you can see I'm sitting here on the piece of sheet steel that I'm going to use, and I can see already that the tape template, that when the center is stuck down, these two sides are sticking up. So I know when I go to make this, I need to stretch these sides of the metal plate to start trying to get the shape I want in there. So let's start trimming this out to rough shape now, and then we'll start trying to sort of bang and stretch and see if we can get this to be a nice shape for what I'm looking for.
Trimming everything to shape, and then I start by stretching using the sandbag and mallet, just stretching on the edges. And you can see I folded in the corners that I want to lie flat on the firewall, and I'm trying to stretch everything around that. And it doesn't take me long before I realise that that is not going to work. I don't have the skills to be able to get that shape into things, so I trim that edge off and I'll do that in a separate piece. It's often a balance with this sort of thing of trying to make a super complicated piece or just make several simple pieces and weld them together, and that's what I decided to do here. So now you can see the flat piece for the firewall I can join on, and it's a much simpler task of making everything fit the way I want it to.
All right, that is pretty ugly, but the shape is there. So let's make it a little less ugly with the TIG.
So this is a bit more of rinse and repeat, and obviously practice, it starts getting much easier. Just grind back the MIG welds, TIG it all together, a bit of a planish with the hammer, and then grind the final bits back and a bit of a sand, and it's looking really good. So you can see I left a hole in the corner because it was much easier to make one domed little circle and weld that in separately than trying to blend everything together in a point.
Okay, it's not perfect. You could probably use a little bit more panel beading just to get some of these, the extra level out and smooth things out a little bit more. But just with a quick run over with the DA, you can sort of get an idea that a lot of the shape is there, and I have a pretty decent looking tunnel now. So let's put it back in the truck and see which bit we need to tackle next.
So with it all mounted back in, it is really starting to look nice. It fits beautifully. And now it's time to reinstall a seat and start having a look at where I am going to put my shifter.
All right, so I've sat a seat in place just so I can start getting an idea of where I want to put the shifter. So currently this has a kink in the shifter, which I don't like. I think it needs to be a vertical. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull this apart, and I'm going to remove this kink. I think I can actually stick it directly vertical, so I'll just shorten the gear stick slightly and weld it straight in, and we'll go from there.
So I started by cutting the old shifter out of the original mount, and I actually cut the kink off of the bottom, so I shortened the shifter slightly as well, and I am TIG welding it back in. Although I did have a lot of trouble with this. It kept giving me welds like it had no gas, but there was heaps of gas, so I don't know what was going on there. But I eventually got it mounted nice and solidly, and we could move on to the next stage. So now I'm just roughly getting it where it would be a comfortable position, and then marking and opening a hole so I can just start feeling out where I want to put this shifter and where it would be nice and centrally located. I then sort of eyeball through the hole exactly where I think my join needs to be with the shift linkage that I'd made previously. And it's just a matter of trimming and cleaning everything up, and then I can tack the two pieces together.
All right, so you saw that I cut the gear stick, the kink of it, and welded it straight back into the original bracket. And then basically, I'd already had this arm on, but originally the arm was super long and the gear stick would have been back here somewhere. So what I did is I cut them off and basically eyeballed through the hole that I'd made in my tunnel to the rough location, got it square, exactly where I think it should be, and put that there. So now let's put the tunnel back in and see if we can just loosely mount everything up and see if the gear stick works the way it's supposed to.
So with my linkage tacked together, it's a matter of reassembling everything and then see if I can firmly mount the shifter into the location where I want it to be. And I'm realizing that it's not working and it's interfering somewhere, and I have to disassemble everything and have another look. This is where I start realizing the angle of the pivot of the bottom of the shifter needs to coincide with the angle on the shift linkage, and I need to modify things to make it all work and function as it's supposed to.
All right, well that was slightly more complicated than I expected. The issue I had was when I actually first bolted this down, the gear stick didn't want to go left and right. And I felt underneath, and then I pulled it all apart, and I couldn't work out where it was interfering and binding. And it ended up, it's because the lateral pivot that runs through here, this base plate was around the other way, and the lateral pivot was like this, and it was all binding against each other because the forward pivot is about there. So I had to make sure that the rear pivot is in line with the front pivot so that it all works the way it's supposed to, and that is now going to do the job. So we have a gear stick. It's still not super solid. It needs to be firmed up by filling in the back. So now I have my rough shape. I'm happy to leave this and finish the rest of this mount later. So let's start trying to fabricate this rear portion to sort of lock in the back part of this tunnel.
So I disassemble everything, and I realise I'm probably making everything much more complicated than I need to, because ultimately in the end this is potentially going to be covered with a centre console and carpet and everything else. So I could probably get away without all of these complicated curves, but it does make everything much stronger this way. And the rear section of the tunnel is no different. Here again I'm putting some crown into a piece after I've put the basic shape in with a roller, and a little bit on the shrinker to get it to all line up with that centre tunnel. And once I'm happy, I can tape it into place and start working on the two corners. Again, marking out a rough template with some cardboard and bashing it with the mallet on the stump really gets some nice shape.
So a bit of bashing, I went around the edge with the foot shrinker and quickly rolled it through the English wheel to just get rid of all the lumps. And I've got quite a nice corner that is reasonably close to what I need. So a little bit of trimming and shaping and I should be able to get that good. So let's do the same to the other one.
And the second corner the same as the first, using the mallet and the stump and get rid of all the lumps on the English wheel. It's nice just to smooth it out. I'm not really putting much shape in it with that, just smoothing things out, and then I can start tacking things together. Getting the rough shape was quite easy on these corners, but getting that perfect fit was extremely time consuming, going backwards and forwards, just tweaking and getting everything lined up nicely, and I am really happy with the fit up of this. It's really come together quite nicely.
All right, that is really coming together. So I've got the whole bottom end of the tunnel locked in, and I am loving it. It's exactly what I was looking for. I still have to tie in the floor There's dips here and in this corner and stuff. I just wanted to get that rough shape, and I can make the rest of that fit at a later date. I am very happy with the shape of the center tunnel now. It's really got the form that I was looking for, but I'm definitely out of time this week, so I'll have to weld this all up solid next week. As I said, there's still a few bits and pieces to do, but I'm happy with the progress. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 1935 Ford replaced the outgoing Model B with the new Model 48. The 4-cylinder engine was no longer offered, leaving just the 221 cubic inch V8 to power every Ford. Another major advance was the option of a boot or a trunk with a trunk back, although the flat back was also still available. There are a range of body styles from the Roadster, the 5-window coupe, the 3-window coupe, the Woody wagon and the convertible. The coupes could be optioned with dicky seats, and all models could be ordered with either standard or deluxe trim. The Model 48 received annual cosmetic updates for the 1936 and 1937 models until the model went out of production in 1938.
Alright guys, and I am just editing this now and realised that I actually didn't press record when we filmed the outro, so I actually had a really fun week. I really enjoy working on fabricating all these bits and pieces and learning sheet metal work, which is something that I've been trying to increase my skills on for quite some time. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Do all the things, like and subscribe, and join us on Patreon to watch the videos a day before everybody else, like we always say, and we'll see you on the next one. See you guys.
The 4-cylinder was no longer offered, leaving just the 221-cylinder V8 to power every Ford. Another major advance was the option of a trunk or boot. Another major advance is the option of a boot or a trunk with the trunk back. Another major advance